regular meeting of the Woodbridge Conservation Commission, April 20th, 2023, beginning at 7:30 p.m. We're currently without quorum. I'm hoping that we'll have other members join us very shortly. First on the agenda was an item we had talked about last meeting, having to do with the brevity and possibly expanding the minutes. This past month, the representative, Tom Hennick from the Freedom of Information Office, presented in this room to the members of various commissions and town government on the Freedom of Information Act, specifically in our case, our interest. Here, he did talk about meetings, and the FOI does formulate the structure and the way meetings are conducted for Woodbridge and other municipalities in the state. And Tom, and I know the concern last time was people having the ability to remember in detail what's happened during the meeting. And I understand that concern. It is often hard to recollect the details. But Tom was very clear that the FOI is designed not to, and doesn't call for, keeping blow conversations in the minutes. It's not a recording of a documentation of what's been said. There's certain requirements, who's attended, what actions taken by the commission, and who voted which way for those motions, time and place of start, and then finish time, etc. In our case, we've given our minutes to a person employed by the town who is going to continue to take our minutes as far as we can see in the future, and that person takes their advice from Freedom of Information and also from within the town staff. So, at this point, we will not be asking our recording person to change their habits on taking minutes. And I would suggest to folks who have the concern either to take notes themselves or avail themselves of the video that's always there to refresh, and fast forwarding those minutes does help, and you can get through them fairly quickly.
I'd also suggest that if somebody thinks there's an important point, they just highlight it so that the note taker knows to make sure that makes the minutes.
Yeah, and individually. Yep, fair enough. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
I will note that we now do have quorum, and we will move on to our second item.
Wait, you've already started?
Yes. We are on the agreement plan submission to the Department of Environmental Protection.
Maybe we could just recap for two people who joined us quickly.
I'd like to keep moving through the agenda, and we can recap when we've finished the agenda items for everybody.
Wait, there's one more person, so why don't I hear them? Just give me 1 moment.
The submission of the plan. Hello, Diana.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I wanted to sit next to these two handsome gentlemen.
Okay. Item number 2, the Greenway submission to the DEP. I was scheduled to speak before was going to be scheduled to speak before the Board of Selectmen their past meeting last week, I believe. My attendance there was postponed. The first selectman was not going to be able to attend that meeting and wanted to be present when the Greenway plan was presented. So we will, I'm scheduled to go up to the next meeting and should be able to submit the Greenway plan post that meeting. Mm. So that's just an unfortunate circumstance. I've received no public comment, and not seeing any members of the public here. I think we can move right on. And it brings us to a happy item. We welcome our newest member to the commission. I'd like everybody to meet Joy Prudhomme. And I might I'm going to ask Joy to tell us what made her interested in the Conservation Commission, but before I do it, perhaps I'll ask and start with Diana, just to everybody to introduce themselves in their own voice.
Sure.
So Joy starts to put faces and voice and names, and so forth.
Testing. Welcome. Joy, my name is Diana McCarthy-Mercury. I'm resident, I don't know what else you want me to say. Background in sustainability, really excited that you could join us. Looking forward to working with you.
Hi, I'm Paul Harrigan. I've lived in town my entire life, and I've been on the Conservation Commission now for maybe about a year or so.
I think so.
Welcome to the commission.
Yeah. And Joy and I have had a chance to talk, so I'll skip right to Sharon.
Pat Joy. I've been on the commission for 3 years and a little bit for a long time on the Wetlands Commission. And welcome.
Barbara Hagen-Smith. I've been on the commission, I think, for about 2 years. Work at the library, as you know. And I'm involved with conservation and historical aspects of Woodbridge with the Historical Society. And welcome.
David?
And
David?
I'm David
somebody.
Ober. I'm a member of the Board of Selectmen, liaison to this commission.
And then there's,
I don't know if this is on. If it's red, it's on,
if
right?
it's red, it's on, I
Right.
believe.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm Joy Prudhomme. My husband, daughter, and I moved here 10 years ago for the amazing school and the beautiful green space. My daughter's now a middle schooler at Amity. I got very involved in the community early on. Some of the more notable things, I guess, would be I was a full-time volunteer at Beecher for the whole time my daughter was at the school, PTO president, fundraiser, chair, special events coordinator, you name it, I did it. Now retired from that. But I've also been very involved, during the pandemic. Another mom in Woodbridge and I started a wildlife club of Woodbridge and a Facebook page. We certified our yards as wildlife habitats, and then we started to do outreach with our kids to share with others what they could do to make their yard. We're so lucky to live in Woodbridge because most of our yards are set up that way. For very little work, you could really have a wildlife habitat. And we approached the garden club, not the garden club of Woodbridge, but the Woodbridge Gardens, community gardens, to have a section of garden that really wasn't suitable for doing vegetable gardening, but it was near like the pine groves. You probably have done that outer, loop. Anyway, things just kind of evolved, and it made sense for us to start a 4-H club, which is primarily a garden club. And the kids have been working on the pollinator pathway because Woodbridge was not on the pollinator pathway officially. And so they went to the Board of Selectmen as part of their 4-H project last year, and they presented, and the selectmen voted unanimously to have Woodbridge proclaimed as a pollinator pathway town. And now our kids are working on they just got asked from Beecher to do a pollinator garden for this year's Arts Week, and they're doing more community outreach. They started a web page. I mean, it's just really taken off. So when I was approached by some town members to replace Kate Rosen, I jumped at the chance because this is something that obviously is a passion of mine. And I am very excited to join you all, and I hope, with all the different hats that I've worn, that I'll be able to help and bring something, good to this group, so.
Hi. Thanks for the time, Val.
Hi
Good
there,
evening, Val.
Hello.
Everybody.
Nice to get, is this your chair?
No, we don't have chairs.
Okay.
You're, sitting next to you is Joy Prudhomme, our newest commission member.
Oh, how do you do? I'm
Nice-
Valerie King.
Nice to meet you, Valerie.
Nice meeting you.
And Joy just finished up a very nice introduction of herself, some of her past activities, which you'll hit the YouTube video, be able to see. I want to ask her to repeat that. And it's lots of good background, and I think it's going to be helpful to us going forward. So we welcome her.
Welcome.
Oh, and I'm also an elected member of the Zoning Board of Appeals as well, so. And that'll wrap up at the end of this year, so I'm kind of doing both things. right
Two
now.
hats on.
Yeah, exactly.
Good deal.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Okay. Next on the agenda is approval of the March minutes, March 17th.
I told Kathy as I was coming in that the wording that it was suspended, jumping rooms had been temporarily suspended. I just thought writing in progress because we could present what's going on now, but it wasn't really officially
Postponed
suspended.
would have been
Yeah.
a better
Yeah.
word choice, perhaps.
But we worked it out.
Okay. All right. Any other comments on the minutes? Then I will motion that we adopt the minutes with the one wording change, as mentioned by Sharon. I guess I need a second for that. Someone like to second the
I'll second it.
adoption of minutes? Thank you, Valerie. All in favor, please say aye.
Yeah.
Opposed? None opposed? The minutes are adopted. Okay. All right. Next item is the tools that Andy Danzig had wanted to use for the stewardship of some of the town lands, the work he does for trail maintenance. It's a attachment that I sent out with one of my correspondents for the meeting. And the total amount, $927. Hopefully it was clear that the last item, the fiberglass handles, or it's either or. He was not sure what's a better choice, fiberglass or wood. He's going to seek some guidance on that. They're reasonably the same price. The process for obtaining the tools is this really will be given to Adam Parsons to source, and Adam will. So these numbers are what Andy found in his research, and with a source that's identifiable. Adam will make a decision on where he sources the tools. They have relationships, and when I talked to Adam, I'm showing him this, as he knew everyone but one of the sources. He had familiarity with them.
And he also knows that you passed on that I found out that Knights will give a 10 or 20%
Yeah,
discount.
they have a relationship with Knights in the town,
Okay.
so I believe they have that, Sharon, yes. He is aware of that. So I think the question was, the last time we discussed, it seemed to be general favorability of trying to support Andy in his work, and that the commission wanted to understand more in detail. And so this is the detail list that, as Andy put it together.
What do we have left in that budget?
The equipment budget is still intact, So it is at this point $900. So on the bottom of that page that I sent, there'll have to be a transfer of a small amount of money from one of our other accounts. We haven't spent money from either of those accounts
You'll
either.
probably get a discount too. It could well be below
Yeah,
that
it could
number,
well
too.
be below that, that's right, we
Because I
can't,
imagine that
you
at
know.
least Knights can do 20 or 30%. I'm sure
Right,
he's gonna get some good deals.
he'll get some off. So, but if needed, I've talked to the finance manager in town and no, doesn't see an issue with transferring the very small amount of money we need. Either, we haven't spent any programs in publicity. I know later today we might talk about spending a little for our upcoming Jumping Worms program, and refreshments, in terms of refreshments, maybe not. Oh, and that would be good. But in either case, either from there or printing, which I somehow didn't put the number there, it's about $400.
So I know time is of the essence for Andy
Yeah,
to
it's
get
that
this
time of year.
equipment. So we have to put the transfer of funds from one account to another on the next Board of Finance meeting in order to get that approved.
It's in such a low amount that it doesn't need an approval. There's authority already given for small amounts of funds.
Is that confirmed? Sorry.
That comes from the finance manager.
The
so-
finance
so
manager.
I have good confidence in
Director
that.
says that.
Yeah, they approve it, I mean.
Transferring
We-
$27, we don't have to go to
Yeah,
Board of
yeah,
Finance to get that.
It comes to our meeting, we approve it, and then finance ultimately approves it.
Okay, so it does have to go through, if it's a $27 transfer,
If you have to take it from one account to another, yes.
it ultimately has to, regardless of the amount.
Well, you could buy everything else and wait on that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
What was that?
We'll see what the number comes out to at the end.
Okay.
There's
So then,
no need
Sure, you know, it's
to
just
wait.
bookkeeping.
yeah, no, absolutely, I know Andy wants it, so I would hate for
Yeah.
that to,
Yeah.
we'd have to hold it up for it to go to Board of
Yeah,
Selectmen
I
and then
w-
Board of Finance for him to
Yeah.
buy
I
equipment
wouldn't
3
s-
months down the road.
I wouldn't see us having to hold up for that reason.
Well, that's what David just said, that it
Yeah.
has to go if we're
Mhm.
requesting to transfer money.
Yeah.
If we only have 900 in the equipment account, then we can vote to approve the $900, but then we'd also have to vote to transfer $27 from one fund to another. That would have to go to Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance. So is it
I'm gonna
in,
leave that to the finance manager. So when he sees the final cost and he.
so then if
said-
we need to transfer
Yes.
later, we can
Yes.
do that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So then is your recommendation that we move forward with
Approval.
With
approval of
U-
927?
using, yes, it's using our equipment budget to buy tools for the town trail master to.
Not to
stu-
exceed 927?
to cover the cost of the listed tools. If it exceeds it a little, it exceeds it a little. I think I'd like to give them that flexibility. I don't wanna.
So
them
then
to
should
have
we
to come
make a
back.
recommendation for, I mean, I don't know what shipping would be, but should we add a little buffer in there and say, $1,000?
Well, yes.
That way if we
Yeah,
need a
up
little,
up to amount would be inappropriate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
is that okay?
We need to have
Yeah.
Do they charge tax?
No
Not
tax.
to a
No
town,
tax.
no.
Okay,
It should be,
that's
Yeah.
tax exempt.
Yep.
I just want to make sure we word it the right way the first
Yeah.
time, so we don't have to come back, because
Yep.
I know he wants the stuff. And the burning bushes,
Okay,
the
so
barberry's getting out of control.
would you like to make that motion?
Is everybody okay with the number 1,000? Does anybody want to recommend a different number?
Do we have enough
as
money
long
to
as
do
it's
1,000?
Up to 1,000.
Yes.
Up to 1,000,
Up
okay.
to.
So, I would like to make a motion to support the purchase of equipment for the Trail Master, not to exceed $1,000 from our equipment budget.
I
Our
second.
equipment account, thank you.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion on the floor to approve up to $1,000 for the purchase of equipment for the town trail master from the Conservation Commission's equipment budget. Any further discussion on that?
Just a question, how much money do we have in our equipment budget?
900?
900.
So where's
900.
the other 100 coming from?
The other 100 will come either from the monies that we have for programs and publicity,
Okay.
or from our printing budget.
And we have enough money to do that?
And we will have enough money to cover the 1,000. This money this is for the budget year that runs through May 31st.
Oh, right.
I always say the wrong month.
June 30th.
Yeah,
June
so
30th.
doesn't
Not
have to
sure why I
last
do
that long.
I think it's the town elections, I think
Sure.
in terms of that.
It doesn't have to
what they
last
used to
that
be.
long, is your point.
What, it's-
It doesn't have to last, that budget doesn't have to
Well,
last that long.
Exactly, we don't
Okay.
have, I mean, we do possibly tonight, we'll talk about a little bit of programs money possibly being needed, and then we have printed the Greenway map, that will probably be $150 there at the max
And we needed
for the
the
year, and
trail
there's
brochures.
and there's 400. Well, there turned out to be a good number of trail brochures.
There are enough certainly for this year's budget. They will be needed
Yeah.
in next year's
Perfect.
budget.
And that's a good point.
They are,
That's something we did
they are
check.
going like hotcakes, so.
I bet.
Yeah.
'Tis the season, right? And so what are our total amounts in all of our accounts that we have?
We have, the equipment budget is 900. The programs and publicity is 150, and the printing is 400.
Okay. So,
And this doesn't include any discounts that might be available, so the
Right.
likelihood of it being
Right. So both.
900 or less is quite likely.
and so the equipment, I didn't put it in the motion, but the equipment that we're mentioning is as so stated in the list that he's provided with us, I would imagine.
So it's equipment is 900, 150 was signage,
Programs and publicity.
publicity, printing materials was 400.
Yeah.
So, and I believe the budget year, is that correct?
Runs out June
David,
30th.
do we go now through December 31st? Because
No.
we've changed everything, or is the budget still gonna end?
Budget's fiscal year, it ends June 30th.
So if you
June
don't spend it, it
30th.
goes
So
back
the
into the
fiscal year
general
is still
fund.
gonna be the same even though our elections,
It's just the
Right.
elections that-
I gotcha, okay.
Mhm.
Um, Okay, so it says equipment and signage, but just to be clear, he's only listed out equipment here.
Right.
Is that right? Okay.
So are we voting?
If there are no other comments, I will,
When does your vendor need the check?
the vendor's not been contacted.
Okay, I thought I heard somebody wants a check.
No,
No.
no,
Give it
no,
out
no.
checks to me.
No.
No, you had mentioned somebody in Public Works would then place the order of these
Yes,
various
Adam
locations.
Parsons is going to be facilitate purchasing for the Conservation Commission. That'll
Thank you.
that'll give it, that'll put it to someone who knows town process and will take it through. And, gets us out of the details, of that type of detail. So, any other discussion? I will call the motion. All those in favor of
No, we had a second.
Sorry.
I have a second.
Okay.
Thanks for the clarification. So all those in favor of using the conservation equipment and equipment budget allow the purchase of tools for the town trail master in an amount not to exceed $1,000. All in favor, say aye. It looks like we have 7 ayes and opposed. No one opposed, and the motion passes. Thank you very much. I'm sure Andy will thank you. I will get that off. Write a note tomorrow, hopefully, to Adam and get him started on the process. Next item is the items of interest to the Conservation Commission. I do not have any updates on the listed items. Anybody? These are, the 2 items are the Town Trails Group and 124 Seymour Road.
No.
I just got back into town today, and I did not do any checking on 124 Seymour to see if anything has changed there.
Have not
Still is
heard
in the same, as
Yeah.
as far as I know. Okay, we will move on. The next item are some of our initiatives. And we will start, I guess, go in order. Jumping Worms is first up.
Okay, I can speak to that.
Great.
We have Anise Dawson, is that her name? Scheduled to speak at the library. We've got the library room approved at 7 o'clock on May 24th for an hour. And she's open to questions. I think she's given this in many lectures. She's works at Yale, and Diana did a poster for her today, and we can all look at it. I think she sent it to everybody. I had one thought that I mentioned to Diana earlier, is just to increase the size of the date and time and location, so that if people look at the poster briefly, they can register where they should go. My phone is in the car, so I haven't.
Do you need this?
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, it's not a touch screen.
Okay.
Where you need to cut out.
This one.
Doesn't go that much more than that.
I like it. I think it looks good. And what do other people think before we?
The town seal on top.
Yeah, just the date and
Yeah, I think I made it into a sentence in the first thing, but I'll make it into just a date and location.
Can we get that on the town website and also in that newsletter that goes out?
I think we just have to request. I think Tony Belinsky, I believe, does the newsletter. She has cutoff dates, and so I don't know what the dates are. Might be
How often
middle
does
of the month.
That newsletter goes out every month, right?
Once a month.
Okay.
We may have missed that newsletter.
I think the date is the 15th, at the cutoff of every month, not positive, but
Thank you, Kathy.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So we
Maybe
may have
she
just-
can squeeze, maybe she can squeeze it in from there, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Because it goes out the first of the month. Well, I would suggest, with the feedback, quick adjustments, and contact Tony.
I believe that newsletter is going away.
Really?
Yeah, the way it cut expenses.
Okay.
I'm not
Really?
sure when. So I would
The
check.
printed one or the
Printed
electronic?
one. No, the one that'll be on the town website,
Yeah.
printed one.
The electronic one was every other week. I don't know the current cycle. I've lost track, not being at home recently. But
To get-
that certainly, we can certainly make that one.
To get back to the Jumping Worms, also, I wanted to each maybe contact different groups. I was going to contact Massaro Farm
Yep.
and the Land Trust. Does anyone have a connection to the parks, Alice Newton Park, and could let them know?
Yes,
Yeah, I can-
I can do that.
Probably the garden club would make a lot of sense too.
The Garden Club, we can do that.
Yeah.
I already have done that, actually.
Okay.
And also the community garden.
I would let Beecher know, because parents are doing stuff with their kids, and with that pollinator project that we're working on at
Yeah.
Beecher.
Could
Perfect.
you
I
let them know?
I'm happy to take this poster
Yeah.
and give it to them, but yeah, I think
Maybe speak
that
to
would be
someone.
cool for
Yeah.
kids to know about that.
Yeah.
And especially, young families will be working in their yards and they can do something about it.
I think it's great, just for the public. Jumping worms are a concern because
They
they're-
ruin the soil.
they ruin the soil and make it incompatible with other things growing, and they're significant danger, and this woman's an expert and can give us a way to figure out how to mitigate that or prevent it from occurring. So yeah,
What about the Boy Scouts?
Oh yeah, all those clubs, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, I'll take it to the 4-H group.
we may need a bigger venue.
Is there,
Well,
Will
it's
you,
at
will
the
you do
library.
that, the Boy Scouts and the, do you want somebody else to do
I have
it?
no idea how to do the Boy Scouts. Does anyone know how to contact the Boy Scouts?
this
Yes,
is just the
I
question I
do.
was going to ask
Yes.
Sharon, because
Yep. I'll reach out to one of the leaders or whatever, and then there's multiple Boy Scout groups and Girl Scout groups, but, you know.
Okay, well, that'd be great. Maybe we should print out, so can we use some of the printing money to print some of these?
Some posters would be good.
Who would be
You could
contacted
post
to
it
print
at the
that?
library and the schools and.
Okay. Just let me hold that for a second so I don't lose. Is there a list of Boy Scout and Girl Scout troops that's exited in town? Joy, I'm sort of looking to you on that since you're
There-
involved in the
I don't
4-H
know
club.
the answer
Yeah.
on that, but there must be. I'm sure
Yeah,
that if
with-
I reach
with-
out to the
with-
leader, they will know that
Yeah.
there's
I think
several
it'd be great to
different-
assemble that list for future reference,
Sure,
to
I could
names
do that.
and contact, how do we get in touch?
That's a great idea.
And then the printing budget is certainly available.
So
I think,
who can
well,
do that
I think within
quickly?
town hall, we can probably get, it's just a matter of copying
Yeah.
them. Then,
Yeah, it's, I mean, I was gonna
Color
say,
copy.
we really don't want them professionally printed. I
No,
don't
no,
think
no,
there's
no.
any
yeah,
need to.
there's not a need.
No,
Right.
just
It-
color
Exactly.
copy
Okay.
50 of them, and that's it.
Yeah,
Um,
I think we can reach out to Karen Crosby, who's our support for the Conservation Commission in Town Hall.
Okay, so
And
will you do that?
We can ask Karen if she can arrange that for us.
Okay, so
Who would
Diana,
you
you can get a copy to Tim, and Tim can talk to Karen, and Karen can print them, and then we can, and
Yeah,
I'll try,
or-
and I'll
or-
distribute
or
them.
I mean, we can do it with email, I'll just
Yeah, that's what I mean.
email and they'll
Yeah,
copy. Yeah,
okay.
that should be easy enough.
Okay, so I've made the, I've made the date
Change.
and time a little bigger. I can go even bigger than that if people need me to. I know it's not,
I
Um,
can't see it.
How,
It's sort of faded
I'm
out.
sorry, what you
how do we get copies of these posters once they're done?
once they're printed.
Well,
That's great.
I we were doing printers, I thought I heard flyers, which to me is just the piece of paper,
Yeah.
8.5 by 11.
Yeah,
That's
We
what
were
I'm
thinking-
saying, how, I'm looking to get copies of
You-
these once they're done, and I don't know whether,
Well, Karen will do with them whatever we ask her to do.
why don't we bring them
And
to the
we're-
library,
Mhm.
and everyone can pick them up? I can pick
Everybody
some.
picks up
Yeah,
5 to 10 and distributes them.
yeah, well, I mean, that's
Ca-
fine, I can have them at the library. Another thing that we do at the library, which is very, very effective, is take the flyer and we print 4 to a page, so they come out about that size. And we put a stack of them on the circulation desk, and people just walk by and take them, and it's
Okay.
Okay,
rather than,
so you'd be willing to do that? Can you-
yeah, our printer can take one and make it into 4,
Okay.
or I can do that with the printer.
So,
And I might just do electronic, because I know Beecher doesn't print anything anymore, and Woodbridge Youth, they'll send flyers to me, and I'll just post them on the social media, and send them to the school, and then the teachers will send them to the parents electronically, so that they have that. So you don't have to do crazy amount of printing of posters or flyers,
Great.
whatever. I'll just do it electronically.
okay.
I will,
So-
If you can
Both
send
are
me the
good.
updated.
Both ways.
Yeah, I'll send this now.
I'll check with Karen, right channel for this, because responsibilities have been moving around within,
But
within the
let's-
staff.
I mean,
Try
if
to
we
get it
don't need
done
many,
by-
I can print them at the library too,
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
not a
Yeah,
problem.
yeah, and that's a number, we'll have to have a number, we're gonna ask for printed copies, so is there,
Well, we can always print
Diane, is there a
more, too.
guess how
We
many
can-
printed copies we would want, or do you, or?
I think
Anybody?
50 is sufficient.
Yeah.
Plus
Well,
the
at
index
maximum.
cards.
And
that'll
you'll
be-
have it, and I can print some at my own house, everyone can print them as they need to.
How many would you want for the library?
How many posters for the library?
Yeah, what do you,
They'll only put up one, and then I'll use that one to make these others.
Right, just for the people who you said might stop by and just take a.
Those I'll just print up, probably 20, 30 of them, something like that,
Okay.
and if we run out, I print more.
Print one, okay.
It's not a big
So,
thing.
all right, so you should be good. And
So-
do we need other printed copies besides the ones for the
I'll take
library?
a few.
Yeah.
We should put them up here in the
Yeah.
town hall.
So when we're sending the request to Tony to put this on the town website, we also send a request to her to print about 50 copies of them, and then everybody will have this in their email, so Barbara, if you have it, you can take it to the library and print it in the format we were just discussing, if that works. And Joy can distribute it to the schools and the
Youth groups
Oh,
and clubs.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Val and
Mhm.
Paul and I
Yeah.
and Tim can do
Ju-
together committees and commissions.
Yeah. Just copy when you send the
Yeah,
emails
you're on.
in, just so I can keep track of who's asking whom to do what.
You want me to put that detail in the
It's
email
coming out really soon.
No.
about who's doing what?
No,
Okay,
no,
I'm
no.
sending
No,
the
no.
updated version.
No,
think it's
just
After.
copy me, just so I can see who went to in case I need to include someone.
Is everybody who's on, from the meeting before, so
Okay.
the committee members, the town clerk, Selectman Lober,
I'm not-
Hua, I think
I'm
that's.
not sure the town clerk, it doesn't need to be the people who need to know about our meeting happening. Like, the town clerk doesn't,
Oh, okay, in
need to-
case they post it for the minutes, if it's a,
well, that gets posted through, Kathy takes care of it.
okay, sorry, I
The-
thought
the
they needed
minutes.
the documents that we were referring to in meetings to be posted to the meeting minutes also. That's the only reason why I included them.
Same question, who has the minutes? Yeah, because the town clerk has all the official records.
Well, the town clerks has the minutes, I'm not sure the poster is part of the minutes, has to be part of the minutes. It's a material that we generated. If somebody makes a request for it, we'll give it to them. The town clerk, I don't think posts.
But it is
Post
a good place to
everything
put up
for
the
sale.
poster. A lot of people go in there.
Down there.
It's
Well,
a
It's a good place to put it up.
that's a different, if there's a
There's
request to,
One more aspect
Post
to
it.
this.
okay.
I have a question.
Oh,
sure.
Sharon, will we be,
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
for both, will there be any need for audio? Will there be a video? Will there be anything that we need to?
Oh. Good point. Yes, that is needed. I will talk to Anise again, but I think that she would like, I told her that there's a screen and a projector. Maybe you and I can talk to her together so that we make sure, or who's in charge of
think-
that at the library?
Anyone from the reference department?
So should I go talk to the reference department about that?
I think it's just a
Whatever
request, so
she
they make it
needs.
available that night. And they usually set it up prior to the meeting, from what I've seen.
Yeah,
As a matter of fact,
and chairs and
you
stuff
need
like
to
that.
tell them how you want the room set up too, with how many chairs.
Okay. It doesn't have to happen for another couple weeks, but I wanna make sure
Mhm.
about the video equipment.
Okay.
And yes, she
Well-
can attach her
Would you just
computer
contact Nancy Flynn?
Yes,
Services?
I will, yeah.
She may be interested in this.
Absolutely.
if she wants
Great.
to do a.
Any
phone
other
call.
discussion on the jumping worm?
Yeah,
Questions?
there's a little more.
Mm.
So in this, we've indicated that there'll be light refreshments.
Oh, right. Thank you.
I'm willing to make some light refreshments. I don't know if anyone else is willing to make anything, but,
Gummy worms?
Gummy worms?
Just kidding. That's what you're The kids would like that though.
that's very funny. Exactly. So, Barbara, Sharon, Barbara, anyone else?
Everything.
Val? Okay.
I like preserving the way this preserves the budget, that's great. How
And-
about to drink?
Tequila or something.
It's got worms, right?
That was good.
Jumping worm.
We're on a roll tonight,
I-
this committee.
Let's think about that. We'll figure it out.
My name is
Yeah.
Julie.
Bottles of water. The bottles are terrible.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
why I wanna,
I don't know. It's tricky.
I'm not, what do other people do at those meetings? I know there's been light refreshments before, but I just don't recall.
I can bring a bunch of
What-
bottles
what
of
was
seltzer from
there?
the seltzer maker.
Good. They do
I
all
mean,
kinds
if-
of things.
Yeah,
A couple
Sometimes people
pitchers of
have-
water.
yeah,
Pictures of lemonade, I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah.
pitchers would be great, but then in cups, but if we need to buy cups, that's what I think are.
That doesn't feel very conservation-y.
No,
Compostable cups.
yeah,
Mm.
we'll work on
No
that.
plastic.
Okay,
This is a plastic-free,
Okay.
waste-free event.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
we should try.
okay,
Great,
so
good update.
everyone put it in your
Thank you.
calendar.
Looking forward to it.
Okay.
Thank you for the work on this, all. And it looks like it's the support of the whole commission. That'd be great. Barbara, I know there was a historical society meeting.
yes, indeed. And at the meeting, the letter that Tim wrote requesting the assistance of the Historical Society in identifying and describing various historic sites along the trails was met with enthusiasm. And I'm not sure our chairman has written back saying yes yet, because she's had an operation or two, so she has not. Maybe she hasn't written back, I don't know. Tim, has she written back? Have you gotten a reply?
I have not gotten a reply, no.
Okay, well, our chairman has had a couple of operations in between times, so, but it has been approved, accepted, and with enthusiasm.
Oh,
And we will-
great.
We will have to
Okay.
start, figure out who's going to be part of this, and, from here.
And
How about you?
It can be a committee of one, me from both sides.
yeah. Well, is it a committee of one from the Historical Society?
No, not necessarily, we haven't even appointed anybody.
Yeah, okay, and that's the indication I got in the response to my letter was the Historical Society would, discuss about it and see if they could figure out a small amount of people to appoint. I thought it would, my sense is it would be perhaps 3 people.
Total?
I made up total. I made that number, thinking that
3 or 4
that
people,
it would make eminent sense for you to carry on, sort of as the hinge point between both commissions,
I'm
and then
happy to
and
do
then maybe 2 people and 2 additional people from our commission. We don't have to settle on the people tonight, but I guess I would like to at least outline and make sure everybody understands what we're talking about, so next time when we come to figure out who wants to be on the commission, have thought about it a little bit. So the thought here is to work, just to recap it, hopefully briefly, we're going to work with the Historical Society to identify points of historical interest in Woodbridge that can be identified on the maps, the trail maps that we have, both on the Greenway large map and on the individual maps that have gotten so much play this spring. And the hope would be, besides plotting them with their coordinates on the maps, we would be able to write up brief descriptions of those historic sites. When I say brief, I don't just mean a couple sentences. My thought, it would be, there might be a 1-paragraph captive, but my hope would be with a QR code that you could put on the trail map for the sites for that map, or one for each site. You would be able to go up, a person walking would be able to go up and read a couple pages about that site, some substantive information to have it backed up. So this would be have to be done over time. The Historical Society figure out how to get this done. There may be some help from students that could help, would like to research, maybe all these different thoughts. And I think the committee of the two will get together and try to talk about that and figure out how to do it.
If it's a QR code, would it go to a website then, where
Yeah.
somebody would look at it? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, on their, hopefully, most people with a phone. Just scan it, boom.
Mhm. So would it be like on the Historical Society's website then, and it would just go to that? If
I-
somebody scanned it?
I would think so, because they have a website and they have some write-ups already.
So you should ask them.
Thomas
could use
Starling
it as-
House, among
Well,
others.
that we'd have to discuss with them, I mean.
I'm gonna have to go.
Okay, okay.
Thank you for being here, David.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Um,
That's great.
And, so, you know, the discussion will bear that out, but I would think it would make sense to have it, and they would have it when people go directly to their site or through the ballot. So it makes sense for them. It's an additive to what they do already.
Right.
Any other questions about it?
Technically, totally ignorant, does that mean you can access these descriptions? You don't have to use a QR code to access them?
That's right.
You can go
You can
onto
go
the
to
website directly and
Yes,
access them? Okay.
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
If they currently exist.
Well, the hope would be
No, but
through this,
as they,
Through
when they
this-
do exist, put it that
Right.
way.
Yeah.
when they do exist,
They
through this
will be.
project, we will, there's
You
some.
can either go to the website directly, or you can go
You
through
can
the
go
QR
to the
code.
tree and.
You could go to the Historical
Yeah.
Society's website and read it, or you could just scan the QR code
Yeah.
while
Right.
you're out
Okay.
on the trail.
Yes,
It would take you there.
yeah,
Okay.
Great.
okay, wonderful. Last update on tree preservation. You know, just a quick update, I understand, Paul?
Sure. The three of us are going to get together after this meeting to set a time to meet with Chris Sullivan. We have some ideas in terms of what we'd like to see in the preservation, in the tree preservation regulation. And we wanted to talk to Chris to get her thoughts on where it would be most workable to be, and get her thoughts on it too. And then after that, we'd be able to come back with a more bodied recommendation in terms of what we're talking about.
Okay, all right. Good.
If I might add a little bit too, just a couple of days ago, I was talking with David, and he suggests that we somehow, and we didn't go into discussion on it, but somehow we get involved with the whole plan of conservation that's being revised.
Okay.
Yes,
With the tree thing. I'm not exactly sure how or what or where or why, but, you know, I think it probably should be, we should be involved with
that,
that
yeah,
plan.
it's my full expectation that we as a commission will be involved with planning and zoning and CUPOP as the town goes through that process. That's what's happened in the past, and I fully expect that to happen again. But it's a good perspective David brings up to that. This is part of what we should be making sure gets in the plan of conservation
Yeah,
and
the
development.
whole tree
If, you know,
business.
there may be a part that we get through ordinance or regulations that we recommend, but there may be you know, for the next 10-year plan, something additionally that we want to lay out for the town to
Mhm.
plan on, even though we may not be going for implementation right now. So that's good point, yeah, that's good. All right. Any other comments on preservation?
I think
Okay.
that's it, is that
Okay.
our plan is to have something to report for next
Okay.
meeting.
So we'll build in a segment for that specifically.
I'll update you after we meet with Chris,
Yeah.
so we know what we talked about.
Okay. All right, good. All right, that brings us a couple of other items tonight. The 10 to 14 Merritt Avenue recap and learnings. Seems like a long time ago now. And to start off, I guess, is there, I wrote down one question to ask me to just start us talking. Everybody is aware of the outcome of that? I'm going to make sure, Joy, do you?
No.
So I'm going to try to recap a very small part of it, and it's going to be natural, Joy, you're going to be catching up for a few meetings.
For a while,
There currently is a subdivision that has been approved down to 10 to, both two parcels, 10 to 14, and 14 Merritt Avenue. They are building duplexes. Any subdivision in Woodbridge is subject to the applicant specifying 10% of the acreage to be open space for a subdivision. And that open space can be, what is done with that open space can be, there are 5 different possible outcomes for the open space, and I don't have them letter specific, but basically they can give it to the town, or they give it to the land trust, and there's a couple, 3 other options. Some they can give it to someone else, etc. In the case of 10 to 14 Merritt Avenue, the applicant decided to and contacted the land trust, and the land trust said they would take the 10%. I'm using the 10% as a sort of just a rough, they'll take the open space that was granted. I don't know exactly how many acres or what percentage it came out to, but whatever the TPZ, it's up to the TPZ to suggest changes if they want changes, or to accept what's been proposed. So what was proposed was accepted, and the land trust will get it. So
It's a,
What was proposed
What was
by
proposed?
the developer, not by.
we did not
yes.
agree with what was proposed, and we were kind of dismissed by TPZ.
Why didn't you agree? Well,
Well, we should
what
maybe-
was proposed,
Mm.
and then why did you?
I don't know that this is the right time to
Just
recap
that
the whole
that could be
thing.
an hour,
We were
or
more than willing to
2-hour
talk to you about
discussion,
that.
so.
Well, okay, maybe we should talk about it.
Yeah,
It's
no.
20
I mean,
minutes.
I don't know how I'm gonna get caught up otherwise.
Yeah, so we
Well,
We
it-
can talk to you
Behind-
privately.
well, let me.
Maybe
Yeah.
we can
The-
summarize it really.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if someone wants to summarize,
I'd be happy to
that's fine,
summarize.
but
Yeah, let's have
before you do,
Paul
that's decided. I mean, we don't, what tonight's topic was there were 2 other subdivisions. I'm not gonna go into any detail on those recently. So there's a spate of subdivisions, there hadn't been for a long time. I think it's safe to say that every member of every commission involved had not dealt with a subdivision before.
That's true.
And there was a lot of,
Wetlands had,
We had dealt with.
well, I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking of wetlands, so that's a correction.
You're
There were
talking
4
about
4
TPC,
commissions involved, but wetlands
land trust.
approved or disapproved, but the.
no, wetlands was
planning and
very
zoning
instrumental in
planning and
what actually
zoning
ended up happening.
And conservation and CUPOP, they were all new commissions. Wetlands may have had somebody before, but wetlands doesn't get involved in the open space in the
As I recall,
subdivision.
was the third one that we had looked at. There was
There-
another one on Manila Avenue, and there was
Yeah,
also the
right.
one on Rimmon Road, so this was the third one that we
Correct,
looked at
so there were 3,
in a short period
recently-
of time.
the commissions were generally unfamiliar with it. So the process was suboptimal. And so we just decided to have and the purpose of this topic is just to debrief a little bit on what happened, and just so we can keep ourselves educated and be better educated for the next time it comes up.
So the subdivision, for instance, that they're building downtown,
The
has that,
housing. That-
Which
Has
that's-
that been
subdivision's
The
that?
part, have you been
That-
part of that discussion about?
That, no,
It's not really
that
a
was,
subdivision.
it's
What
not a
is-
subdivision. That was
The Toll
solely
Brothers
owned.
development you're talking about?
A developer,
it was
Okay.
owned, so it was not being subdivided. It was being developed as one, as a complete parcel.
subdivision is, like, define what that is, cause I'm
It's-
getting confused
it's
with like a
taking-
development
It's taking
project.
one piece of property and making it three.
So-
Anything greater than that's considered a subdivision.
So I
So-
have 6 acres and I subdivide it
Into
into
three-
3 lots or
yes.
whatever.
That's a subdivision.
Okay,
If
that's-
you divided it into 2 lots, it's not a subdivision.
But also,
Anything
what
over
happened
2?
at, excuse me, Merritt Theater, that wasn't really divided, that was housing. The lots were not, that was a rental property, so it was still the same owner.
But it was
But
the
they were
same owner, but
subdivided, I
they were
guess, but it wa-
subdividing it into separate lots, though.
Right, but they weren't separate deeds, it was all the same,
Yeah.
it was
Would
all
it-
the same developer, that was a little bit different.
Was,
It wasn't the same one as the other Manila, that was,
All right.
So-
I'd like to call this back, because we need to get back to the topic on the agenda, which is the learnings. And, over time, Joy, as another one of these comes up, you get a little more educated on subdivisions and have time to read the regulations, it'll start to make more sense. Nobody here is an expert on the subdivisions, it's TPZ that really deals with it. We try to, our role has been to look at the proposal from the developer and see if it makes sense and give a recommendation to TPZ on that.
So you made a recommendation to TPZ,
Yes.
Yeah,
what was the recommendation?
there's a certain parts of the parcel to be designated as open space.
Okay,
And
and it wasn't the parts that they had designated?
Correct.
They didn't choose to ask the developer to re-propose in line with what we had
Recommended?
recommended.
Okay,
So, but the part we're debriefing is not actually that part.
okay,
The part we're debriefing is the interplay that's happened between the various commissions as this went forward. And, how we can best affect our mission, which is to look after the open space in when these subdivisions happen. So the question I was gonna start with, haven't got out yet, is anybody unhappy with the way this turned out?
Yes,
yes,
I think everybody was.
yes.
Okay.
It was very disconcerting.
Well, the process was disconcerting. Is
No,
anybody
the outcome was
unhappy
just-
The
with?
outcome
let
was,
me-
the outcome was
Dis-
disconcerting, the process was
Well-
disconcerting, the whole thing was a circus, it really was.
Is
And
it-
I think really John Paul is a very charismatic, very effective, and very influential person. And to his credit, he's done a lot of good things, but I think that he kind of outspoke and out-charmed our ability to communicate effectively what was better for open space.
Well, unfortunately, we didn't have a process.
We didn't have a
and,
process.
The commissions didn't understand who was responsible for what, whose guidance they were supposed to be listening to.
Mm.
It was a lot of time spent on something that didn't really accomplish anything at all, and it was unfortunate because it was, the neighbors were upset about it because, their input wasn't listened to either. It was really, the whole thing was a complete circus.
Diana, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, and Tim, did you want to finish what you were saying, and then I'll
No,
continue?
I'd like to recognize you now.
Okay.
And I'll make my comment after.
Okay. I generally try not to, criticize what the process was. I recognize that, in government, very few times things are perfect and smooth and everybody wins. That being said, I think from what I have gathered after observing the process and understanding the role that the Conservation Commission played and could have played, did not really, we did not do our best. And I think we could have done a better job of coordinating with CUPOP, with the TP&Z, to make sure that we were all in alignment when somebody like John Paul comes forward. It's not working the teams against each other, but we're all on the same page about what we're looking for in you know, from our perspective, in that 10% set aside for conservation. We needed to have a united front, and I think we can do better in the future to align with some of the other commissions in town that also, you know, had some weight in that area, had some interest in that area. I think when we went to TP&Z to read the memo from CUPOP that mentioned we shouldn't be taking any land, you know, that was unnecessary. To then speak to members of CUPOP who said we didn't even realize that the land trust was getting the land, otherwise we would have changed our position. I think that was very eye-opening, and that's an important thing to note. With that, you know, I said to the members of CUPOP that I had met, well, we would have been happy to speak to them at any time about our position, so that we could have been better aligned in that discussion and better informed, quite frankly. It came to my attention that they had been requesting a member of the Woodbridge Conservation Commission to attend their special meeting weeks in advance, and the commission was notified the day before. And I think that was not enough time for us to adjust and find somebody to adequately represent what we had been discussing. And so that was a failure on our part, and they had to go forward with their meeting to the best of their ability without being informed by one of us who could be represented. You know, I think I think we can do a better job. I think, Tim, since you attend their meetings as an ex officio member, I think it's important that we get updates from those commissions that you attend as chair of the Conservation Commission regularly, so we know how we can best inform them, and we can best be informed as to what is going on. That way there's no strife, there's no confusion. When we all, you know, get up to bat, we're all saying the same thing, and we're headed down the same road. That's my opinion. So I think moving forward, I would like to request that we get, you know, summary updates, if not from a representative of CUPOP, then
So
definitely.
are you saying that Tim goes to CUPOP meetings? Do you
I
go to
do.
CUPOP?
I do.
Have you ever let us know that?
Yeah.
I've never known that. So do you
We
represent us
had a
there?
discussion about who was gonna go to the CUPOP meetings. No one wanted to, and I said I would do it
I don't
when I started
remember
going. Diana,
Do you
would you
recall that?
clarify for me?
Yeah.
Sure.
You said,
Wait.
you used some language about weeks before, and then you said day before.
So the day before we were notified, the committee
For
member.
which meeting?
I'm sorry, there was a special meeting that CUPOP had before the TP&Z meeting where they were
Okay.
discussing Merritt Avenue, and we all got an email the day before that from you, saying,
Oh,
could somebody
okay.
attend? Which,
What-
I mean,
what-
I
what-
People don't
appreciate
live
that
like that.
some people can shift really quickly.
Yeah.
many.
I didn't even.
Yeah.
All right, now,
So-
that explains, now I understand.
If that clarifies.
May I
So-
say something also, excuse me?
Sure,
Other
Val, go
than
ahead.
that particular meeting, our committee, we suggested that we attend the TP&Z meeting, and it was told to us that this was the first time that the Conservation Committee had attended the TP&Z meeting. And so Sharon and Paul did an excellent job making a presentation to the TP&Z. I also think that having one meeting a month is not conducive to having a process for a subdivision. You need to gather information, you need to have information, and one meeting a month was not enough. I also think that it was very obvious that every time there is a development, they have many professionals that what their interest is for that development. It's not a general interest, it is specifically for that development. They have an engineer, they have an attorney, and it's very hard. It was at one point that we were writing letters, we were actually writing letters and had I don't want to say the opposing side, but the developer attorney was reading our letters at the TP&Z meeting, which didn't make any sense.
Correct.
We need to have people who have that are professionals on, it's not about whose side, it's the best interest of each party. What's the best interest and who can represent that the best? So we're trying to represent from the Conservation Committee, but they have attorneys and again, land surveyors, and they're representing the developers. So the process needs to be more than one meeting a month. We need to gain information, we need to gather information from each particular other committee. It just, the process was not conducive for even hearing what we really had to say.
Valerie, I think that brings an interesting point from my experience with wetlands. In the budget, there's a budget for a consultant. And maybe we ask for that in next year's budget, that we set aside, if there's a subdivision, that we have a consultant, so that we have somebody with some authority who can speak to our concerns, whether it's a naturalist or an environmental, some species that's at risk or something. And that would be an interesting.
I would agree with that.
If I can, if it's all right, Tim, just to respond to what Sharon said, I believe, there are some conservation districts across the state, and we can find out which one we're members of, and try to get some support that way.
Yeah, because the issues here are not unlike any of
Unique.
the issues any other town is dealing with,
Right.
you know? And it just sounds like there's no collaboration.
Right.
You're
And
all
there could be.
siloed, which is, a
Typical.
problem of Woodbridge in general, is like everyone is in their own little
Yeah.
silo, and you need to kinda, you don't wanna go to 100 meetings a month, nobody has time to do that, to stay informed, but if you know that there are players in that same arena dealing with anything from the country club to
Yeah.
any of these issues, there's 5 or so groups
Yeah.
that probably need to have a meeting,
What-
and come together and
I think like we talked about a couple months ago, we really need to have a process. And we need a process that's gonna be coordinated, that everybody that has input into this decision knows what the process is, so that we don't have Coopop think that they decide something and Conservation Commission feels it's our responsibility to make a recommendation, and town planning and zoning shows up that didn't even seem to understand what the subdivision regulations were in their own meeting. It was just, the whole
Yeah.
thing was,
Yeah.
frankly, kind of
Well-
embarrassing.
And I think
The
a
la-
better liaison between TP&Z and us, and somehow developing that,
Well-
because they seemed like they were foe rather than friend, and that was
Yeah,
a
that
little
didn't
odd.
make any sense at all. I
Yeah.
mean, we
So-
were trying to
Surprising,
reflect
right?
what the residents in that area had told us, and we were
But
the only
even more what the
people that had
environment
heard from them.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to add, like a narrative, saying about what Coopop does or TP&Z. I think it's important that we try to have constructive conversation around this, and I think it's great that we have the opportunity to give our feedback and our
Yeah.
perspective on that process, so that we
Yeah.
can learn from here.
So one hurdle, I'm going to try to make a couple comments and then bring it back a little bit, ask one more question, and then tell you about a couple of things that have happened. One of the hurdles we have with TPZ specifically, that we just have to find a way to overcome, is that once a matter comes before them, they will not discuss the matter with other commissions outside of their meetings. They cannot, so Rob Clee, for instance, is the chair. He attends the CUPOP meetings as a liaison from TBZ to CUPOP. When something comes up, when 1014 Merritt Avenue came up because it was on the CUPOP agenda, he recused himself, left the room. So he won't listen to anything.
He has to do that.
He
though.
has to do
Yeah.
that. And so it's not like we can go and speak to TPZ or to the chair of TPZ and say, this is what the Conservation Commission's thinking. They won't listen at that point. It's all done through their public meeting, public hearings, and what they hear at those meetings. So that's just one hurdle. Well, let me ask you this question. Is anyone happy with the disposition of the open space such as it was, not what we wanted, but such as it was to the land trust? Anybody happy with
You mean that
the
it was,
outcome in that way?
that it was then
Yeah.
gifted to the land trust?
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
No, I don't
No,
see that it
that's
matters
appropriate.
whether
No,
it's
it's
the
great.
town or the land trust. It's
Okay.
just,
All right.
there is somebody who's responsible for it.
Just that we had ideas of that
Yeah,
more
of a greater,
that wasn't the appropriate
greater
amount
cutout.
or placement.
yeah, in a couple of times.
And we would have been glad to give that to the land trust too.
Just curious, why do you ask?
No, I think the one thing I learned, I made an assumption. I think other people did too, actually, but I think I went in and I'm thinking, and maybe because the regulations are written that way, that the first choice of these developers was going to be to give the land to the town. And I guess I didn't even play over the option that it would go to the land trust, because as we talked to JP and he always talked about giving it to the town, and you know, so maybe we were primed because of that, because we assumed it. John Paul I think assumed it. I can't.
The regulations said it could be
The regulations said it
granted
could
to
be
either one.
others.
Yeah.
But in any conversation we ever had with John Paul, it was always about the town. You know, even in this commission, not just when I talked to him at the beginning, but when he came before, he talked about it coming to the town. So I think we all went that way. So I think that presumption, you know, got in the way, because in the end,
actually had
the developers took the easy path. They went to the land trust, because going through the town would have meant going to the Board of Selectmen and going through a longer process. And I'm going to say more about that in a moment,
But I was just wanting to conserve it. I wasn't
Yeah.
thinking at all of the town. I
Yeah.
think the land trust is actually more optimal. I mean, I can see wanting it to give to the town if it is a thoroughfare or something the town needs, but
okay.
I think environmentally, the land trust, is into perpetuity there, and
Yeah.
that's a good thing.
Yeah, and it would be with the town as well.
No, the town
No,
changes it, that's
yeah.
not so.
Yeah, no,
The
it
land
would be
trust.
deeded,
Okay.
deeded
I-
conservation.
All right, I did not bring it tonight, but I will remember next month to bring in the state law that identifies that when land is put aside as open
Well-
space, that,
That didn't
It's-
happen. I have
I-
direct knowledge where that hasn't happened many times,
well,
or at least twice.
but it should. And the law,
But
the law
Board
says
of
it should be,
Selectmen- But
it
the Board
should
of
be.
Selectmen can vote to use that land if it's town land. That's what I've been,
I'll let you examine the law and you
that's
can,
great to know.
you can read it, and it should be put in, the law says it should be put in the deed. And if it's not, even if it's not, it doesn't preclude it, it doesn't make it so it's not open space. It's supposed to be preserved in perpetuity. So
Well,
I can bring that in and share that with you.
I think one learning too from this process is, I think our perspective should be looking at this with fresh eyes, and not necessarily putting too much weight in what the developer is suggesting that be the open space.
Oh, I
You
think
know,
we should always review what they propose. I think that is a function, and I don't think anybody objects to that function that we go in.
But I
and
think maybe
look
even
at it.
before, we could propose, before they we could
Oh.
also do our own proposal.
I think we could have a discussion with them in terms
Yeah.
of what they would
Yes.
suggest, what they think,
Absolutely.
would work best, but I think there was too much weight put into what they were suggesting. I think what they were suggesting wasn't in the spirit of what the subdivision regulation was.
Okay.
I mean, actually, it wasn't. It was supposed to be land that was representative of the parcel, and what they gave the town was land that was underwater, which, I mean, just, I think
Well-
it's important enough that, you know, the impacts of these to the people that live in those neighborhoods is important. Whether this division is down in the flats, or subdivision is in the flats or somewhere else in town. And I think it's important that we have a defined process, that we have enough notice of when this is gonna come up, that we can, hopefully discuss it in one of our regular meetings as opposed to have a special meeting, that the town planning and zoning recognizes our role in the process. I mean, we frankly put a lot more thought in what the open space would be than they did. We frankly understood what their regulations were better than they did.
Mhm.
I think there has to be better coordination.
Yeah.
Now, this wasn't a huge development, I mean, but for the people that lived in that neighborhood, it was very
It is
important.
very
It was
important.
very impactful to
Yep.
them. But, you know, I think without the lack of coordination, something like this could be coming to your neighborhood too.
Can I just say, what I hear us saying is that, what Valerie said is that if a significant or even somewhat significant subdivision comes to our attention, we should probably schedule some extra meetings. That we should try to figure out how to be notified as soon as possible, and we should come up with our own plan, maybe before the developer comes, at least some ideas before the developer comes to us with their plan, so that we have something, and possibly the
Yeah.
consultant.
There's
Does
No-
that summarize what people are thinking?
no harm in getting ahead of the curve
Yeah.
So-
in that regard and thinking about it.
Do I recall correctly that it has already been agreed by, the receivers of of any subdivision that we will immediately be notified?
Yeah, and
So
that's
that
a good segue.
That is
to- That's how I was gonna
that is
start,
a change that.
start my comments, that Chris Sullivan agreed that she would notify us when she receives subdivision applications.
That's what I thought,
Yes.
which is
She,
a step in the right direction.
yeah.
I think also the notification of the neighbors has to be improved too. And that's something that, the
Yeah.
building department needs to look at.
No, they,
That's,
Because
do.
a lot of them claim that they were not aware of it. They didn't have forewarning for meetings and things like that, so they weren't
Yeah.
able to express
That-
their,
that came up at one TPZ meeting.
it did, yeah.
That's
So
a-
there was, I mean, not to get into the weeds on it, but
Yeah.
there was a problem with that. I just think that needs to be better managed also, and how that's communicated to neighbors has to be improved too.
That's a
So it sounds like
TPZ
from
function.
what you're saying, Tim, is we're gonna be notified by Chris Sullivan, and then maybe you notify us with a special email, and we plan a special meeting soon thereafter, so that we
Well-
can get ahead of it. Does that seem reasonable?
Well, my getting the notice from Chris and my notifying him, that, I think, yeah, my notification is probably going to come if it involves wetlands, when it goes to wetlands, and that's gonna give us a long
A
time
little window.
before it gets to TBZ, so I'm not sure that a
Some of them
special
don't
meeting.
involve wetlands.
Some of them granted. So I think it's to say that not all cases, I think, will necessitate a special meeting. I think we'll have to
But
judge
we
it.
certainly can
Yeah,
have such
but
if,
we can have such, and I will take feedback, if give you the facts as we know them, and if if the comments are that we need to get moving, then we'll call a special meeting, but.
I think
I
an
don't wanna
important,
make it a, that we will, because it could be way out. We know how long some of these things, and 1014 took a long time.
I think another important thing is that there's agreement with the Town Planning and Zoning Commission, who are the people that actually make the decision, and we provide the input, that what the process is between us and them, so that there's
Yeah. communication
communication and understanding of, what we're recommending, and that was what didn't work last time either.
That was an important thing. that was
Well,
nice to understand.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a comment and answer that, and then I'm gonna tell you a couple of things that have happened I've been involved in. Just, I'm gonna start to be conscious of time here. Well, I just lost it completely. I lost your point.
So
TP&Z.
coordination, so TP&Z understands what the process is. They didn't seem to understand what the process was in terms of recommending the open space,
Yeah.
what our role was,
Yeah,
what their
thank you.
role was, what the regulations were.
Yeah. I think in the end, what threw them was mostly perhaps getting a recommendation from us, getting a recommendation from Coopop, getting comments from a selectman. And I think that threw them
From what?
from a selectman. They had a letter from a selectman.
I wasn't aware of that. What was that?
A letter came in to TPZ right before their meeting, questioning the non-authorization by the Board of Selectmen to Coopop to act in this matter. So it was a selectman writing not as a representative of the Board of Selectmen, but as acknowledging they're a member, but saying their personal writing a letter on a personal basis.
But I think
as a
that's
citizen of
actually
the
really
town.
important
I don't
that-
understand. So what did they say, that
They-
Coopop
they-
didn't have a
they-
role in
they
it?
took,
or?
that was one of the items. The letter addressed 3 or 4 items in Coopop's letter.
But I also think that's a good point, because I
Right,
don't
okay.
think typically Coopop has been involved in this thing, and I
Right.
think that we are
Right.
we are sanctioned by the
Right.
state to be involved, and I think that Coopop had a lot of leverage where it wasn't, in my experience, that previously Coopop had even had any input.
Involvement. And
So
there
I
was-
think
it was-
we need to
it's-
communicate with Coopop that is unprecedented.
So the other thing
Well-
too about the lack of coordination is Coopop was making a recommendation based on not a reflection of what our recommendation was. They didn't even seem to know what our recommendation was. They just knew about the proposal
Yeah.
for the land in the river, but didn't
Yeah.
seem to address
So,
what our recommendation was. It was just,
Right.
again, it was lack of
it,
coordination.
Again,
The
we
fact-
didn't send we didn't send a
That-
member to
well,
that special meeting where
let-
they were talking about
let's,
that piece,
but
so,
let me address that, Diana.
sure. I
Be-
actually have
because-
to leave in a couple of minutes because our meeting's just getting over. I'm just giving you
The Coopop had 1014 Merritt Avenue on their agenda multiple months, and it was listed that way, 10 to 14 Merritt Avenue. I had attended sessions on 10 to 14. There was more or less just getting updates, what was going on. I was conveying information for the most part. As I said, Robert Clee, and he attended a couple of those meetings. He had to recuse himself, so he wasn't providing any update.
Maybe you should have
And I did.
to recuse yourself.
No, well,
Maybe
there's
as
no
another
need for me to
commission
recuse
member.
myself. I wasn't making any decision on the
Okay.
matter at hand. The Coupon meeting where they decided to work to make a recommendation, had the same header, 10 to 14 Merritt Avenue. And I was going away that night. So I updated them a number of times on this. and the other things I updated them on. So I told them I wasn't gonna be there. And I sent them that note just so they know, and I sent it a day or two beforehand, but in that day before or two, I got a note back, would I send a substitute? And
Are you
that
saying
was-
that they wrote you the day before the meeting, could you send a substitute,
To
or
get
they
us-
said
yeah,
it weeks
yes.
before?
No, a day or two before, I don't know that email, I don't recall if that email came the day before or a day or two before. So I'd have to look back in my email chain. And I guess it sounds like I sent it out and asked if anybody could attend.
The day
from
before
what-
the meeting.
From what you said, but, because I didn't realize they were gonna be constructing this letter. And,
I mean,
I'm
frankly,
not
it
even
was,
sure when I sent that, I'm not even sure what I said in that note, if I even knew when I sent that note. So,
I can follow up.
Paul?
it was, I think it was commendable that they made the effort to make an opinion, a thoughtful opinion and write a letter about it,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, they were ill-informed in terms of what was
They were-
being
they were-
discussed.
Mhm.
And that was, I think, if we had a written process, that we would follow, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 8,
What-
whatever the number of steps we have to
Yeah.
follow, so that it's coordinated, we'd be well served.
Okay.
Uh,
Let me get to a couple of things before Diana has to rip out of here. Connected with that, the Coupop actually started to put together a process, and they were asked to cease and desist on that process. I don't know why.
So if you remember a couple months ago, I wrote a little process, wasn't
You-
very
you-
involved, but it was, the start of thoughts of things that
Yeah.
didn't seem to be happening
Yeah.
right.
Well,
And
they
so-
mentioned they were asked to cease and desist. And I think the same thing would happen if we put together a written process that would, and my guess is would
No, we have
affect
the
other
authority
commission
to
members.
do this.
If it, I know we started to do it. So let me tell you the couple of things that have happened since,
Okay.
I met with Chris Sullivan to do a debrief. Had a real good session with her. And talked to her about a number of things, but one was my concern about the level of knowledge within TPZ about the Conservation Commission and subdivisions. I mean, and, immediately she said, everybody's new, learning, hadn't dealt with subdivisions, and I think all that's true, and I think it's contributing factors. She did think they were better up to speed now, and did understand what we did. That was her opinion.
I mean, they were looking at maps like this, upside down and sideways and stuff. They didn't even know what the parcel property
Well,
looked like.
we can question individuals in their preparation to work on a
It
map.
wasn't one person, it was
Yeah, yeah.
everybody.
Well,
It was like
there
that.
were multiple people. The other item, just to update you, I was called to a meeting with the first selectman, the town attorney, and the chair of Coupop, and it was on the better coordination between the two commissions, and it was basically on this topic, that we better coordinate what we're doing. The question there came up, whether Coupop should really be acting on subdivisions, because that was a question we had raised, and had been raised by others. In that discussion, what came out, the town attorney said, we could decide this way or that way, they are or they aren't. But in the end, he was looking for a path, and he said, in the end, we're gonna act the same way. We're gonna act in the best interest of the town, cooperation between the commissions, and we will cooperate. But what did come out at the end of the day was it was pretty striking. The Coopop chair made the statement that if they had known that this was going to go to the land trust, they would not have taken the action they did. They would not have, written a letter saying
Correct.
that we wouldn't take the land. Referring back to talking to Chris, it's now my belief, when a subdivision comes forth, the language in there and the regulations say that the applicant will propose to the town the 10%, blah, 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 and will also get agreement and from the party that's going to accept the open space. And that did not take place in these subdivisions ahead of time. That was late in the game. So
Chris described the process as being the open space was identified, and then the developer had a period of time to find an entity to take it, whether it be the land trust or the town.
I guess the open space will not formally, or the subdivision, if there's going to be open space, will not be formally approved until the applicant comes back with proof that someone's going to accept the open space. So I think what happened here is, even though the regulation said that the applicant had to come back with the proof that somebody's going to accept it, nobody really emphasized that to the applicant. I think it was there in the regulations for all to read, very clear, but nobody was pushing it. I think in the future,
So,
That's why we had a
Chris
consultant.
Sullivan, I think, will make this clearer. In the end, what happened is she said to them, we're coming up towards the end, you gotta get proof. And the applicant said, well, if the applicant was gonna go to the town, they'd have to go to the Board of Selectmen. And they knew that was gonna take a long time, so they went to the land trust, which was an okay outcome from the open space. So I think in the future, she's gonna push a little upfront, more information about the fact that they need to approve it. So
So that doesn't
Here-
make sense, Tim, and I'll tell you why. Is because there has to be agreement with this commission in terms of what the recommendation is gonna be. Not for the developer to find somebody to take the land and then propose it to somebody else that we found somebody to take the land. That cuts the Conservation Commission out of the process entirely.
yeah.
No,
It's-
well,
It's fuzzy, it doesn't make sense.
No,
Just change the process. The
doesn't-
process is off.
Well,
it
wait,
doesn't,
can
we
I-
don't, we're not being, our role would not change because of that.
So
Because
what-
they're being, it's emphasized to them that they have an obligation to prove who's gonna accept the open space.
Yeah, but
What-
what's the open space? I mean,
Well,
when is
Sorry,
that open space
Who has the
determined?
obligation to prove?
the applicant
Okay.
has to come before things are finalized.
To say somebody is accepting this open space.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Now-
So that
now,
means we've
T-
already agreed, or TP&Z have said that that's the
Well-
open space?
Well, they have to have these things would
Tim-
happen in parallel, Paul, I think. So this is, let me
But Tim,
describe the way
let me just interject one thing before you say that, because this is a concern to me. So let's say we find a piece of land that we want the town to take. Do we have to, and then we know that the Board of Selectmen has to approve it, but do then we have to go through Coopop to take it? Or is it enough to get the Board of Selectmen to say they want it and they're willing to help us fund getting it?
Well,
Well,
I'm making the comment that that has nothing to do with, or subdivisions, I will answer that question in my view. My sense is that if we make the recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, which we can do, if we find such a parcel of land, it's up to the Board of Selectmen to decide if they want to ask Coupop for their opinion on that piece of land, because it will, in the future, become public land. Not their opinion because it's public land, but it will become public land, and they could ask that opinion.
But it seems to me that they don't have the same interest in conserving land. They have an interest in recreation
Well,
and
you're
different
right.
things.
You're-
So
you're-
it's,
we
it's
have-
cross purposes
We have
with
the
us.
premier interest
Purpose
in,
of Coupop
open
Commission
space.
shall be responsible for making recommendations on the proper usage of all publicly owned property in the town of
yep,
Woodbridge.
right,
Wow.
It's pretty clear in there. The Board of
Yeah.
Selectmen shall select 6 members, there's 2 ex officio members, TP&Z, Conservation
Yeah.
Commission.
yeah. But then the question is, to Sharon's point, that wouldn't be publicly owned land, so why would they comment? In the
If it's-
case of a subdivision, private loan, it's not publicly, so why would they comment? And so that's the issue that the selectmen raised, that's the issue that was raised here, that's the issue I raised in the meeting that I had with the parties. So I think the process, if I can describe what I think the process on subdivisions, with now the enlightenment of having gone through this, and seen, I told you one part of it, I think Chris is gonna make sure that the applicants know they have to get approval. And we're gonna be involved with the applicant early on. With that will still remain the same. And I think we can support Chris's message to them by saying, listen, if this land is land you would like to, whoever land it is, would like to go to the town, then you need to contact the Board of Selectmen and get them engaged. And now the Board of Selectmen, and that'll be a contact of a general nature. The TBZ will not have made its decision, but the applicant will have some idea of what that open space is. We may have already been engaged with them to give them the message they got to get to the Board of Selectmen, and we may have come to agreement or maybe not. But the Board of Selectmen will know that this is coming. The Board of Selectmen then can either choose to engage Coupop or not. They'll
But
make that choice.
It seems like it definitely waters down our interest in conserving land if we now get a Board of Selectmen that is or isn't interested in conserving land, and Coupop that is or isn't interested in conserving land. Because our
Well-
mission is to help create protect habitat and
Yeah,
open space.
Right.
And theirs is not, so it's all of a sudden very
What-
different.
well,
I know.
Go ahead, Joy. Go ahead, Joyce.
My interest of why I'm coming in here too,
yeah,
I'll be fully disclosed, is, the issue of the country club, for instance, okay? And I believe that ongoing thing that's been going on forever and ever, and hopefully, we'll see something happen with it, eventually, but, as much as I wanna conserve space, I'm also living in the real world where multiple things need to happen at the same time. It's not this person wins, this one loses, but how do we take 150 plus acres and conserve as well as create a generating stream of income that the town so desperately needs? So it sounds very much like this town, if there's going to be a new 10-year plan, that probably what makes sense is that multiple groups need to, and it's hard because these are all elected and appointed boards and commissions, and there's no training. This is on the ground training. Tonight, I'm here right now figuring this out. but I can say that we do need to work together with multiple groups. And yes, each group might have a specific interest or focus area, but I think that for the town, since we work ultimately for the town, the select, our selectmen, that we need to figure out a way to sort of collaborate with all those other groups so that all the interests, there's a consensus, I guess is my point. And it sounds like there's a lot of bad feelings of whatever went down with that situation.
I don't know if there's
sounds
bad,
awful.
necessarily bad feelings, it was just poorly managed.
Poorly
And
executed.
And the
Poorly-
expectations in terms of one town planning and zoning, and our expectations were not aligned in terms of what the process was. And I think that could be very simply
People
hammered
hadn't-
out with a discussion of what the process is going forward. Everybody agrees
Right.
with it, what it
Pe-
is,
People
and the
hadn't
problem
done
is
it
solved.
in a long time, and
I-
most of the people on the East Coast had no experience with it. So,
Yeah, my sister, and that was kind of very evident, and for the information you had just
Yeah.
said to come out now,
Yeah.
we could have used that information earlier. For me, it's not granular enough. These are big decisions, and it's almost like these decisions are being made on some of the committees on the fly. I personally, I have to be honest, these terms that you're using, subdivision, development, there is a difference between the first subdivision we had at the country club and this one, and we never made the difference. The difference was that was a subdivision that had different lots and different deeds, so you would have different owners. On the one on Merritt, we never actually got to the point where that was one deed and one owner, and that makes a difference in terms of how you see open space and who is responsible. So I did have a problem with it going the 10% because I felt that it really was the developer, it was part of that piece of property, and there was some responsibility that went along with it, and he gave it away and made it the responsibility of the town. There
the
is
land
a
trust.
difference, there is a difference between an apartment complex and a subdivision, and we never even got to the point of discussing the differences. So we're using the word subdivision, that's normally for sale. That's not normally an apartment complex. And
Well-
so these are the kind of information that we could have used a
we're
consultant.
accepting the TPZ
That's a good point.
subdivision definition. They were approving a subdivision, whatever a subdivision was to them, their subdivision regulation, they said this application is a subdivision. So we didn't put the terminology on this. This was
But that was
the
more,
land use
should have been
office.
more fact, but
Yeah,
at one
but
point they were
I-
talking about sale, and then they said, no, this is going to be leased properties.
Right.
And so
But
you
it-
have, now you have 56,
But-
totally different, so maybe they didn't have the knowledge that, because it was going back and forth between a leased and a sale. So
Okay.
even that should have been, to me, more granular. We should have, if we're going to do this, we have to do it, you know,
Yeah, I'm
with
not,
all of our expertise and knowledge. So for me, I did have a problem with it, to be honest with you.
yeah, but they decided that after. So once more, just to reiterate,
Bye,
if,
Diane.
if,
Right.
good night, Diane, if,
Obviously, my vote.
Oh.
All things.
Call you?
if this recommendation, if the applicant goes to the Board of Selectmen and they choose to involve CUPOP, CUPOP would then return their recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, not to TPZ, because that's what Board of Selectmen would be asking them to do. So that would be one simplification, if you will, for the TPZ. We
Why wouldn't they just give it to us? I mean, we're the ones who are trying, I mean, I
well,
understand, but
because the Diana read it,
they're in charge
the
of public lands.
CUPOP gives recommendations to the Board of Selectmen on public land. This is land that may become public, and so the Board of Selectmen chooses to ask one of their commissions for an opinion, to do some work,
Yeah, but
they
if
will
they're
do
using
it.
the criteria that it should be recreation or help people in their
Yeah.
Edict does not have
I-
the conservation aspect
I-
of it that we are so
I-
dearly
Right,
entrusted with.
right.
So-
It is proscribed, the use of the land. It's open space. So there's not much to.
Okay, as
it-
long as
yeah.
they believe that, as a group, that open space is
Yeah.
a good thing.
Well, we-
Otherwise, they could undermine anything we do
Yeah.
because they don't think open space has much value, whereas we do by,
Well, they didn't think that open space had much value. I don't,
but it's
I wasn't
wetlands.
at the
They-
meeting. The
they
meeting
need
wasn't
to be
recorded.
informed.
So it unfortunately, so we don't know what really went on in that meeting.
That's fine, I'm just
It's
saying
unhappy.
that
So
they're under the impression that wetlands is not useful, and that's a concerning thing to me,
That-
because
I,
it's
I
a
get you.
waterway, it's a
Yep,
very useful thing, so they need to become educated as to the value of it, cause they obviously didn't have that
Right.
perspective.
I share that same concern.
They didn't also recognize, or know, I guess, that we had recommended there was other land on the property that would be open space that could have been used for recreational
Yeah.
purposes too.
'Cause
And they didn't seem to
it-
address that
it-
in the recommendation.
There was no, there could have been a conversation between the chair of Coop and myself, for instance, but that never happened. That would have been one way to get coordinated on it.
Mhm.
Okay, so maybe we should leave it there.
I have a question, Tim. If
Yeah.
Paul had suggested doing a process, whether or not they implement it, what is to preclude Paul and others to come up with the process?
That's exactly what I was gonna, pretty much what I was gonna ask, why would we or anybody else be told not to come up with a process?
Well, we haven't been,
Huh?
but we
But why
haven't been.
would
but
anybody
what
say,
I'm-
don't come up with a process?
When I'm I can only say that Coop was putting together a flow chart and they were asked to cease and desist. So, and they did.
Can I ask, by whom?
A town official, and we'll leave it
Okay,
at that.
yeah,
Because
that's fine,
I'm
but-
not, I
But
wasn't.
we're not
but-
Coop
I'm
either.
second hand at this point, and
Right.
so, and third hand, so I'm not
We're
gonna go
just trying
beyond
to
that.
become effective and useful
I-
Yeah.
and
Well,
understand.
and I
can't-
get, maybe Coopop was trying to
Yeah.
figure out what you guys are trying to figure out, where, this doesn't make sense, this is, it's kind of embarrassing, I have to say, like, coming from,
Well-
as an outsider looking in,
Well-
like, this looks like a cluster,
It-
and I'm like, this is horrifying, like,
it-
who has time for this?
It was that's the very reason why I was asked to join the Coop chair with the first selectman, because it was embarrassing at the TBZ meeting that there was this confusion. So that meeting was, how do we better coordinate this? And I described to you a process that I think we can write down, but that what may happen in the future, or should happen in the future, when there are subdivisions, that will make this clearer. And we were asked, we probably have better coordination as when these things happen. And we need to get the applicants, if they're gonna go to the town, to do it timely, so that the Board of Selectmen has a chance to decide if they want Coop involved or not. That'll be up to them, and it'll be on that side. TBZ maintains, the regulations are the regulations. TBZ makes the decision whether to accept or ask for modifications, or to waive the open space requirements. We still have our involvement with the developer, and everyone recognizes that, and our role with TBZ to advise them and to recommend with them. Can we do better? Get to
TPZ
them
didn't
earlier?
seem to realize
Yeah,
that what
I
our
don't-
role was.
Do they
Right.
realize that now?
Chris believes they do.
Well, how about the head of it?
I-
Have you talked to him since you're on Coop Up with him? Can you talk to him?
Yeah, I'll try now that
And
there are no
indeed-
subdivisions to talk to.
And indeed, why don't we offer it, think of the land trust as a good resource in general, because they're very willing to take land
Yeah,
and
and
are good.
there's nothing wrong with that outcome. So, because I didn't ask my question the right way, but it was good what we talked about. You know, I wanted to ask the question, which I'm only gonna ask parenthetically here. When do we want land to go to the town, and when would we think it'd be better to go to the land trust? You know, that's a question worth, maybe worth thinking about.
I think we'd have to
Yeah.
talk about the pros and cons, because I honestly don't know.
Yeah, and I don't know, I have an answer, and maybe that's where Coupop helps, because, you know, maybe they can see uses of land that we wouldn't see.
But they don't necessarily
I
want
mean-
preservation.
Yeah,
I
well,
feel
right.
like you guys should all be working together, you
Yeah.
know, like.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
no,
sure.
I
Even though you
think,
have
I
separate
think Joy,
interests, it's not working together, but a collaboration of sorts of, versus
Yeah.
it feels like we're doing this and they're
Yeah.
doing that
Yeah.
and no one knows, and then there's a bunch of misunderstandings.
well, I think it's more
the
that
process.
Coupop has newly gotten involved. They've never been involved in any other subdivision, so it's a
They're
sort
not,
of
they're
a-
not really part of the process.
You know, Joy, I'll tell you, you know, comment by the town attorney in this case.
But even
I-
how you were treated by TPZ concerns me.
Well,
Because this commission, it makes sense if there's an allotment of land that is part of the whole package, and you're one of the players of that, you know, that they being dismissive to you, or not, you know, like understanding.
yeah,
don't
I wouldn't
understand
wanna
that.
say that TBZ was dismissive of us.
We would like to say it.
They
Sorry,
did not,
that's what I was hearing
they
from you
didn't
all.
accept our proposal, but I don't think they, you know,
Tim.
put us aside as a commission.
Yeah, going
Well-
back to what I said
All right,
about the
but-
That's
number
what I
of
felt.
meetings.
That's
we-
what I felt.
Is it?
Right,
Yeah.
we,
Yeah.
we-
Okay,
Absolutely.
then I
And
will
so did
stand
Paul.
corrected.
We were
Okay.
completely disregarded, we were wrong, we were disregarded, we did not exist.
Other than the neighbors, we were the only ones that actually visited the parcel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah,
and-
yeah, when an attorney says that this is not necessary, which is what was said about what from our letter, that's very powerful. And we had no way of combating that.
Yeah, well, we're gonna have to learn to better advocate with TPZ within the confines of how they do business, because the things can, you know, somebody gets the last word, or, you know, type of thing that I haven't
understand
figured out
that.
yet.
I
Do
just
they
think
say things
they've
that
taken us
that
seriously.
you'd like to counteract, and I think we have to
It
get
was honestly,
better,
Tim, when the discussion was going on and we were presenting what we were recommending,
you know.
they were, their tone with us was different than what it was with the developer, which was kind of surprising. It
Okay.
was questioning what we
Alright.
were proposing as opposed to questioning the developer what they were proposing. And we were a fellow commission that was empowered to recommend what the open space should be. It was really upside down.
Okay. One thing I'm gonna take away, is maybe I will talk to the, Coupop chair and ask if, they have something they're trying to finish, but once they finish, their revision of their major document that they take care of for the town, that if we could have a debrief in their meeting, similar to this. I'd like to understand why, I want to really answer the question, do they understand what we do? I think somebody raised that before. Does Coupop understand it? Does TPZ understand it?
Is it?
But I may raise with that with Coupop to make sure that we could, to start to understand the value of the open space, because I think I heard comments that seemed like they just didn't appreciate.
Well, we haven't heard from them directly, but that
No.
was the impression we got from anything they've.
Yeah, from what they said at the
Is it
meeting,
possible
it's,
to have a joint meeting with the purpose of better
I
understanding?
think that would make a lot
each
of
other?
sense.
That
I
makes
think-
perfect
I
sense.
would
Yeah.
think, I mean, I
It
wouldn't.
sounds like you all don't know what, you know, where the lines kind of
So,
I
so for
wouldn't think
instance,
it's good to have
Well-
all three of them, but
together, and when
so one of our
meeting-
concerns with the open space that we recommended is we thought it should be useful. That's why we recommended open space in two areas on on the land, that there should be some use to the neighbors, to the people that lived in that area.
Actually,
New comment?
well, I don't think in our commission, we're commissioned to take care of the neighbors, we're commissioned to
Yeah.
take care of the land.
Yeah.
And though we take everyone into consideration, it's really my concern with the environmental stuff, and that there's, Coopop is more
Well, that's
involved in trying to
conservation.
figure out if it's helpful
Yeah.
to them. They should have been
Ju-
listening to the people and how important it was to them
Yeah.
as the neighbors who
So-
felt it was a recreational area.
All right.
And that's how they could maybe have been more influenced differently if they'd understood the intensity of the neighbors.
I
Let me
think
make
Barbara's
one la-
suggestion of having a joint meeting is a good idea.
Yeah, I got it. One last comment, and we'll finish up with just a comment on the Audubon. So Joy, I think to your last comment, I just wanted to respond. We have a fundamental difference with Coopop in our understanding of their role. So
Sounds
we,
like,
even with the joint meeting, we may not come out with a common
Yeah.
understanding.
but I mean, the role should be very easy if you look at what you're chartered to do, right? Like, to me, like,
Yes.
that
So
should
the
define what, this is your boundary,
they are
and
more
there's their
interested
boundary,
in-
and maybe
What?
there's some kind of melting together,
There-
or maybe there isn't, I don't
the-
know.
The reading and the interpretation of language can be different by different parties, and that's the case here.
Okay.
And if you want to take some time and read their charter, I mean,
We
and
should all do
the
that.
fundamental issue is, and the very last, is, as was read by Diana, you saw it applied to, their work applies to land owned by the town. There's an adder to that, which is land the town has first right of refusal for, but excluding that for the moment. So land owned by the town. A quote-unquote subdivision of land of a private developer is not land owned by the town, would be the view that many would take, reading that literally.
So the process that Chris outlined to us was, once the open space was identified, then it was the developer's responsibility to find a party to take it, whether it be the town or the land trust. And at that point, Coopop could weigh in on whether
Well-
they thought the town should take it, because at that point it would be possibly publicly owned land.
Well,
But not up
I
to
mean,
that point.
If you say possibly, it's even before that point, it's possible. If there's gonna be a subdivision, it's possibly town land. You know, I don't personally take that point of view. It's town land when it's town land. Now, can the Board of Selectmen say, Coopop, would you look at this? Sure, and that's their right. So, okay, great discussion. Long, but thank you. On the very last item, we'll come back to it. That Audubon assessment, we're lacking some information, a question I asked last time about where did this come from?
Are we supporting it though, or you, I don't understand. We're supporting Audubon doing,
Audubon
The
didn't
Audubon
propose to do anything.
Society did a study
okay,
on the property to
Yeah.
assess what
Right.
species of birds were
Yeah.
there. And they also made some recommendations in terms of what could be done to improve the habitat.
Yeah. So we were gonna have just a discussion about the report.
But yeah, how did this come about?
Well, that was my question, and we haven't gotten an answer yet.
So I would contact the authors directly if you want to have that information.
Yeah.
There are a lot of birders in town. I'm not a birder myself, but somebody would probably know. But apparently they do this periodically. It's not like a special thing. And just to be clear, Conserve Woodbridge or United for Woodbridge had nothing to do with it. Wasn't a party to asking them to do it. Had nothing to do with it whatsoever.
Yeah.
So the way I found out about it is I read an article in the paper about it. And then I asked somebody to send me a copy of,
Where,
in the Woodbridge Town News.
there was an article about that study?
It was an article about that study. It was the different species of birds. I think I mentioned this in the last meeting too.
I just didn't retain that detail, Woodbridge
Yeah.
Town News.
And that's how I found out
Well, it
about
says
it.
it's prepared for the town of Woodbridge though.
Yeah.
So that's,
Right,
was
that's.
that the town?
Well, I don't know if that was an official
think the
town of
town-
Woodbridge,
I mean, it's
as
different to
opposed
say
to,
I don't
Yeah,
think the
town.
town
we-
asked for it. but
yeah, I,
But
Since the
somebody
town
pretending
owns
that
the
it
land, it
was
was
town
prepared for the
business.
So if you
town.
Google, I don't know that much about the Audubon Society, but if you Google the people that authored this study, this is what they do.
Yeah.
They do these kinds of studies throughout
Yeah.
the region.
I already
That's
reached
pretty
out to one of them and I haven't heard back yet. I have to follow up maybe with the other person.
Because whoever ordered it had
When is the next
obviously an
meeting?
intention
Yeah.
for,
There was no
getting
order
this
or
information.
attention. I think they were just assessing what the wildlife was on the property. At least that's my impression of it.
but it's a contentious
Okay,
subject
before the worm
with
thing.
the country club, so if you could see, like, if somebody went and made a case for, the nature is coming back and there's a special bird that lives here now and this and that, or
Well,
there's
there
special
are.
trees.
Yeah, there are.
Absolutely, well, of course, that's what's gonna happen when you go from having a polluted golf course to having nature, come back to life. But it still is interesting to know, it would be nice to know who spearheaded this, because otherwise
I
why
don't
are
know.
we even looking at it? If we didn't spearhead it, then why are we really looking at it?
Well,
Because I tell you,
Well-
the way it came up is I read the study and I thought it was interesting, and they'd made some recommendations in terms of enhancing the pollinator pathway on the property, and they'd made
and
some
also the maintenance of the
recommendations.
property.
What's that?
And also the maintenance.
So
of
And also some maintenance to the property
Yeah.
too. And so I thought that was of interest, and so I sent it to the
Okay.
rest of the people on the Conservation Commission.
Yeah,
And
Last month.
in the
I'll send it
meanwhile, I reached out to somebody from NRCS, and I talked to Steve Muno about what pollinator grants they got, just so I could be able to tell the Conservation Commission about what I learned. And I haven't connected with the person from NRCS yet.
okay.
Paul, can you
it's
send that to me
great
again?
stuff, I read through it.
I'm sorry?
Can you send it to me again?
It just
Sure.
still, like, that, like, this is,
Yeah.
it's the ongoing issue of what they're gonna do with that land, and it is going wild.
Yeah.
But the recommendations, could it help it go wild better, because it does need a little help in some areas to flow better, and,
Right.
what their recommendations are. But, do we do projects like that while we wait for the town to decide
We-
what they're gonna actually do with the land?
Can make recommendations on that.
And then the developer can buy it tomorrow and undo everything that we worked so hard to do?
I think
Yeah.
most likely the property is gonna be open space forever. Whether it's continually be argued about and debated is probably what's gonna happen. But ultimately, it's gonna be open space probably forever, and I think we ought to take advantage, if we can get grants to help the pollinator pathway and make some of the suggestions that they recommended. It's something that we should explore. I think it's within the purview of the Conservation Commission.
All right. I think we're having next month's meeting tonight as we continue with those questions. So this is a very type of thing that this topic was supposed to cover, Joy. So we could
Okay.
have that discussion and
And
talk
hopefully I
about
would
it.
have
So I
talked to
hope-
that person at
Yeah,
NRCS and
and
get a
hopefully I
little
would
more
have heard back
information.
from the person who wrote it.
I don't know if anybody knows Steve Muno, but I spoke to him last week, and he gave me some information about how their pollinator pathway grants work with
Can you
NRCS.
talk to us about it?
Okay.
Can we put that on the agenda next week?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, absolutely, yeah.
Well,
That'd
we
be
can
good.
make it part of this, I think, topic. We'll
Well,
just make it.
Let's make it a subtitle
Yeah.
specifically about
Yeah.
grants, because that would be
Okay.
helpful to us in general.
Mhm.
And with that, do we have a motion to
So
adjourn?
moved.
we have a second?
Second.
Joy
Second.
is a second. I beat you to it. And we are adjourned at 9:35. Thank you all very much.